I wrote a piece for my newsletter called The End of the 20th Century. It's turned out to be the most viral piece I've written. It's about 20,000 views, a couple hundred shares. So let me talk a little bit about that. People have been asking me for my reflections on the US election, particularly my friends overseas, wanting to know what the consequences would be for the US, for US foreign policy, for them. And, there was a lot of takes out there about the media and about um, Biden, Harris, should he have dropped out earlier, or did she make too many mistakes? But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I'm not sure any of that stuff would have made a difference. I think there was actually a real seismic shift that happened in this election, and it has been occurring. It didn't just happen in one night, but I think this election, presidential election at least, kind of really made it visible for all of us to see. There's this real burn it all down mentality that exists on both the right and the left. And Trump, as the chaos candidate, really was able to harness that. I think he got a lot of burn it all down votes from people frustrated by the existing institutions that we have and their inability to actually solve any problems and make things better for people. People on the left want to burn it all down because they, you know, uh, hate U.S. support for Israel. They uh, despise some of the institutions that they feel or colonialist or imperialist. So they want to burn all those down. And then people on the right who think about the deep state and the corruption and the massive government spending, and they want to burn it all down. So you have these two burn it all down forces who have just increasingly over the years been um, disenchanted with the way the entire American infrastructure is operating. And Harris wasn't really able to capture any of those votes. She was, as much as she liked to maybe say that she represented some sort of change, she was really in this presidential race the establishment candidate. Ironic, but she was. She really didn't distance herself from Biden at all. She didn't distance herself from Washington at all. She didn't make any sweeping, burn it all down promises the way Trump has and has continued to do even after being elected. And so I think that anti-institution mentality, the belief that the institutions no longer serve us, that they're really just protecting their own interests and they're not listening to the will of the people, that the everyday person is being forgotten as these institutions just continue to churn through large budgets after large budgets. I think that was a huge factor in this election. I think it's also just indicative of where we are right now in society, that we just have lost a lot of faith in these institutions. Some of it's because these institutions have been deliberately attacked, and some of it's because these institutions just haven't delivered. So I think that was part of it. And then there's obviously the media piece. Harris, for all her money spent, really just didn't understand the media landscape as it currently exists. Trump really leaned in to the meme culture, the influencer culture, the counterculture aspect of social media. Social media has a real sort of anti-authoritarianism or anti-authority, I should say, streak built into it. I talked about that in my book. Um, in some ways, social media positions itself as the opposite of expertise in many ways. And so Trump embodies that in a lot of ways, right? He's not an expert in anything really, but he's really good at generating memes, at generating attention, and he's always been smart about playing the media. He played it well in 2016. He played it well here. He really didn't focus too much on legacy media at all, apart from Fox. And he really relied on the influencers online and the online ecosystems and the conservative media apparatus that has been built over the past 10 to 15 years. These individual factors add up to a larger picture, which is that we are just in a different world now than we were when I was growing up and when many of these institutions just held much more credence and sway with the American public and honestly with the public more broadly. And whether it's been the war in Ukraine, whether it's been the COVID-19 pandemic, whether it's been Occupy Wall Street, there's just been this gradual eroding of trust that these legacy institutions have really survived on throughout the course of the 20th century. And if you look at legacy media, it's not trusted anymore. If you look at academia, it's not particularly trusted or well respected anymore. Government, obviously, is in the crosshairs too. And so, what I've suggested in my book, and I've suggested in this newsletter piece, is that this is really the end of the expert-centric era. Because media, academia, government, health, public health, science, these are all expert-centric disciplines, right? The expertise is centered. Expertise has communicative power. Um, the more degrees you have, the more authority you're given. The more subject matter expertise you have, the more authority you have to make decisions. And that system of operating, that operating system, that MO has been under attack for a long time and has been gradually and slowly eroded over time. But I think this election probably stuck a fork in it, at least for the time being. And then you look at Trump's cabinet appointments, right? He's not interested in subject matter experts, people who have expertise in XYZ area, who have long careers of working inside the establishment. He's purposely picking um, ideologues, media personalities, people who have made a name for themselves as being anti-establishment, anti-expert, um, and really are positioned to implement an ideological view on government as opposed to a more measured, expert-centric view on government. And so that's kind of where we are. That was the gist of the piece. Um, there's a lot in there, so give it a read, and then let me know in the comments what you think, your reactions. There's been a lot of positive reactions, a few criticisms, which is fine. Um, and also, we're this is the story is not over here. We're in a new era, I think. The 20th century is officially over now. Biden was the last 20th century president that we will have. An institutionalist, a man who still believes in reaching across the aisle, trying to find bipartisan compromise. I don't see that happening in this current Trump administration, at least not the way it's lining up with the people that have been chosen to be in the cabinet. Um, there's a real distaste for working across the aisle. Each of the political camps have become very dug in the United States. The progressives don't want anything to do with conservatives. Conservatives don't want anything to do with progressives. Each thinks the other, or at least each accuses the other publicly of ruining the republic. Anyway, long story short, um, read the piece, let me know what you think, and we'll see how this all transpires.